We have a story that will impact you.
That's right. This is going to be a big blow to net neutrality because the expert committee report on net neutrality has been made public today. And contrary to what the summary indicates, the fine print reveals that the report actually makes a strong case for regulating web content providers that offer basic calling services. The government, however, is putting up a bold front. Here's a word in from Minister for Communications and IT, Ravi Shankar Prasad.
Well, let me clarify that the present report is not the report of the Department of Telecommunication. It is a report of the committee of officials which are constituted to give me an overview of what is the whole scenario of net neutrality and what is the way forward. This report has come in public domain. A copy of this report has also been sent to TRAI. As I had told the Parliament, I will await the TRAI's report, and thereafter the government will take a very considered view in the Ministry of Telecommunication and also the Cabinet. But having said that, let me clarify, the government of Shri Narendra Modi is deeply committed to the larger goal of availability of internet without any discrimination to the people of India.
All right, let's take it across to Gauri Vivedi, who actually brought us that story 2 weeks back, and she's joining us right here on ET now for more perspective right away. What is the exact recommendation of the expert committee that has been made public today, Gauri, especially regarding the OTT companies? Is there good news for telcos and bad news for the content providers?
The DoT panel on net neutrality made public today bats for regulating domestic OTT communication providers, which essentially means companies like WhatsApp calls or other such facilities, the basic voice calling being provided by these companies should be under some sort of a regulatory oversight. And that's great news for telcos because they've been lobbying for that all along, and that's bad news for OTT players. However, the committee says that there is no case for regulation of OTT app companies and in fact OTT services differ from telecom companies, and that of course should bring some cheer to OTT companies. The committee however does say that there should not be any gatekeeping by content providers, an argument that has been maintained by telecom companies all along and should bring some cheer to telcos. The committee also says that there needs to be greater look into the overlap services provided between telecom companies and application providers, a reason for actually a lot of unhappiness for OTT companies because that could mean some sort of a greater regulatory oversight. The one big reason for cheer for telcos could be that the committee says and bats for some sort of traffic management which telecom companies have all along maintained to ensure their networks do not crash, and a matter of a lot of discontentment as far as OTT players are concerned. The committee also bats for greater role of TRAI in the sense that the regulator should be checking unfair practices by telecom companies and should also be checking all tariff plans, including zero rating plans, and that of course means greater scrutiny into the tariff plans of telecom companies. Last but very importantly, the committee says that there in fact should be a clause in license conditions to ensure net neutrality is followed in practice by telecom companies, and that essentially means more regulation and a reason for unhappiness as far as telecom companies are concerned.
Gauri, thanks for getting us the perspective on that story. But let's take this debate forward. This is a big story and this is going to impact every internet user in this country. So let's analyze these recommendations because, you know, like I told you, the summary of the report seemed to indicate that it's in favor of net neutrality. But is it really, is that the truth? Let's find out from two experts, TV Ramachandran, who represents Telcos, and Nikhil Pahwa, who's of course an activist really for net neutrality. Nikhil and Mr. Ramachandran, thanks for joining us on the show. Nikhil, you know, 2 weeks back when we had you on the channel after Gauri broke the story, I remember, you know, we were in two sides of the spectrum, not because I was batting for telcos, but you were hoping that Gauri's story was wrong and I was hoping that her story was right because we usually don't get stories wrong. And I'm glad the story is right. But big disappointment, you'd say, looking at the fine print?
Yeah, I think it's really disappointing that the DoT has that the story became true. I mean, you guys broke the story, and I just think that this is a big blow for consumers in India because it means that there will be a license that will have to be bought by the VoIP companies in India. So far, we have as consumers been paying for data when we use VoIP, so it's not free calling. But the DoT seems to have ignored that. One big headline that I would give to you is that, you know, this is essentially license Raj for digital India. because of two factors. One is the licensing or potential licensing for the VoIP services, for WhatsApp calling, for Viber calling, and the second is that zero rating will be approved on a case-by-case basis. This basically means that the government will have more leeway as a licensor, and the TRAI will also look at zero-rated plans on a case-by-case basis, so more work for them, and therefore also more regulation. So the regulators have become powerful, and this report has come in from a ministry of regulators in a sense. I think this is not the direction that we were expecting from this government. We thought that there will be minimum government, maximum governance. It just means that there is more restrictions. The other fact that I would sort of put on the table for you is that there seems to be a move towards protecting telecom operator revenues, and I thought we were way beyond the days of protectionism in this country, but it doesn't look like it.
You've actually given us a headline calling it the license Raj as far as Digital India is concerned. But Mr. Ramachandran, I know you had your skin in the game till some time back, and now as the head of the Telecom Council of Assocham, what are you making this out to be? Nikhil says this is a direct attempt to kind of protect the revenues of telecom operators, and we've perhaps moved beyond that.
Frankly, it's a 111-page report which has come out today, though parts of it were leaked in terms of the reports were there in the media, but the fact is it will take time to read through the voluminous report. It seems to be a lot of good work done, a lot of factors looked into. It's very comprehensive. However, I can't comment too much in depth on it. I can take some of the broad contours of the report. I think it's probably a step in the right direction, but not gone enough. I think it is quite unfair to the telcos. It's a bit harsh on them. Some of the aspects of that, we can discuss that more further on. But on the whole, it's a step in the right direction, but not enough. It's not done enough, I think, for both consumers and telcos. Consumers are also harmed by some of the things which are undone or half done. That's my feeling.
I wonder who's happy with this report, because Nikhil here says that he's dejected and you were saying not enough done, even though your smile tells me a lot more than what you would want to say. But Mr. Ramachandran, the fact that Nikhil pointed out to the zero rating plan and it is going to be looked on a case-to-case basis, this brings a lot of discretion on the part of bureaucrats, and doesn't this pave the way for corruption, something that your sector has seen in the past?
You could be right, Rajiv, but I don't really think that is the case, because what would need to be, they have done the right thing. They have said, after all, it's a tariff plan. And so the tariff plans have to be filed with the regulator. It's not in that sense of bureaucracy involved. It's a regulator, independent regulator is involved. You have to file it like a normal tariff plan, and regulator has to take a view on that. Because there are thousands of permutations and combinations of tariff plans, and you can't apply a blanket order on all of them. Each one has to be examined by the regulator. He's doing it today. And for all tariff plans, and there are millions of them. Incidentally, I would like to point out that this is the approach taken by even the FCC in USA. You know, towards zero rating plans, they have not tabooed them. There is some misunderstanding in some quarters that they have tabooed them. No, it is very clear in their ruling that zero rating plans would be examined, because there are various structures of tariff plans, and one has to look into it from anti-competitive aspects and then take a view. That, I think, is a correct position that the committee has taken.
You know, Nikhil, what in a sense sparked this whole debate was the zero rating plan. So the irony is that as far as the zero rating plan is concerned is where the government has kind of passed the buck to the TRAI and says that it can be looked at on a case-to-case basis, instead of saying that it's not on, or it's, you know, it does not find favor with it. Is that the big disappointment according to you? And do you buy Mr. Ramachandran's point there that even US has regulations that allow a case-to-case look at zero rating plans?
Well, can you tell me whether we can trust the TRAI today? I mean, a regulator that actually faked an economist article in its consultation paper and was so heavily loaded in favor of the telecom point of view, can we trust the regulator today? Is it really an independent regulator? I think these questions have to be asked of every single member of the TRAI that was involved in creating this report. I don't think that we can trust them. We had higher hopes of the DOT because they seem to be far more reasonable and far more open to points of view related to what consumers had to say. Look at what the TRAI did. They released email addresses, and despite complaints, kept them public and open, and people are being spammed. When was the last time the TRAI, even despite having regulations, actually took action against telecom operators? Look at the SMS spam regulations. Look at the vast scam that goes on where consumers get billed. While the regulations exist, when does the TRAI actually act against the telecom operators? I don't think we can trust the TRAI today. And frankly, there needs to be a complete overhaul of the TRAI itself. It needs to be there. It's important to have an independent regulator, but I think we need the regulator to be actually independent of the industry.
Nikhil, you know, the other point that I picked up in the report, and I'm surprised that not too many people are talking about it, is the need for security clearance for all content providers, and the government's justifying it in the name of national security. But, you know, there isn't much detail. But if you need security clearance, potentially from the Home Ministry, if every startup in this country or if every content provider needs security clearance, that's surely not a move towards facilitating ease of doing business.
Well, it's just about having more work for the bureaucracy and a bigger bureaucracy to do these things, right? There are recommendations about setting some sort of a team to look at net neutrality issues. When you, I mean, it's just involved in making the bureaucrats more important, in making the TRAI more important, or making the DOT more important. Who from I mean, which startup is actually going to go to the DOT or the TRAI and ask them to approve their plans or go and buy a license? Startups will just leave this country. I mean, if you talk to iSpirit, which is a think tank based in Bangalore that looks at product startups, according to their research, about 58% of the startups in this country that raised Series A in the last financial year are not even registered in India, and they're Indian startups. People are preferring to register their companies outside this country. You know, it's great that SEBI is going to allow listing of Indian tech startups separately in a separate exchange. But what's the incentive for them to do business in our own country? If you remember what Deepinder Goyal, the founder of Zomato, said, if a competitor was on 0 rating, he would not have been able to build his business. And now he's taken that business to 23 countries. So why are we increasing the regulatory burden on businesses instead of easing it? Why are we, you know, one big point that I would like to sort of share with you is that instead of growing the broadband pie, this is an attempt to slice it up into different pieces. And that's the worst possible approach. We already have really slow broadband in this country. NIXI, which is the interconnection exchange, isn't really operational, and even there has been seems to be some sort of a capture there from the telecom operators and the ISPs as well, right, because content providers like us and startups cannot connect to NIXI today. So instead of making things better and easier for startups and making things cheaper for consumers, we seem to be heading in the opposite direction. What sort of a government is this then? I just don't get it.
You know, you're actually referring to the gatekeeping by content providers, and Mr. Ramachandran, I have that question coming your way. This kind of gatekeeping won't this really affect the overall ecosystem of internet in the country? Would you like it to be any other way? I mean, I wouldn't for sure.
Of course. I think I have very strong views on this. I think internet.org, they have probably erred in their decision on that, because internet.org, in my opinion, is an initiative which particularly benefits countries like India, which are starved of the internet. You know, the BRIC countries are 3 times our adoption of internet, and we are one of the BRIC countries. Our rivals in the BRIC group are 3 times our level of internet adoption and usage. So I think we have a long way to go. Anything that facilitates the internet for the have-nots, for the people who are not connected, whether in the rural or urban areas, I think that must be encouraged and facilitated. And internet.org is one of those. Are you saying that, look, internet.org facilitates part of the internet, so it has to be the whole or nothing? Is it like, it is like saying Marie Antoinette saying during the French Revolution, if the poor are starving and don't have bread, let them have cakes. I mean, you can't do that. The man who has nothing would rather have something in lieu of nothing. I think that's a right way an emerging economy has to take. We have to take our own approach which benefits the country, the consumers. Internet.org decision of the committee is harmful to consumers. In my opinion, I think it's probably erred in its understanding, the committee.
Nikhil, I know you're itching to come in on that. While you take that on, I also have a very quick question coming your way. Is there any respite, however, that they are trying to regulate domestic OTT communication, which overlaps with telecom-like services, but they're not perhaps willing to regulate OTT app companies just yet? Is that just a silver lining amidst all of this gloom?
Yeah, so first let me just respond to what Mr. Ramachandran said, right? I think there's a fallacious statement there, assuming that there aren't neutral ways of providing free internet. The point is that you should not, this is just a way of instituting a carriage fee, essentially, zero rating, saying that internet companies will have to pay telecom operators for consumers to be able to access those services. There are neutral ways of doing this where you can do ad-supported access to the whole internet. You can actually use the USO fund to distribute coupons for free access. There's also sachet pricing, which can make internet access affordable at, let's say, 10 rupees for a certain amount of data. So there are affordable means of doing this. It's not that if people can pay 10 rupees for a phone call recharge, they can pay 10 rupees for an internet recharge also. So I'd like to address this thing that for the poor you need to have zero rating, or you need to have services like internet.org, because what these services do is they don't give access to the entire internet. They only give access to those companies which are willing to pay or willing to collude with the mobile operators. And the issue with that is that destroys the startup ecosystem. It destroys choice for consumers. Just because they're poor, it doesn't mean that you dictate what they can get. And especially when there are neutral alternatives as well. Sorry, could you just repeat your question again?
I was just talking about, is there any respite that there will perhaps not be a regulation of the OTT app providers just yet? This is just going to be regulation of domestic communication-like services. Yeah,
I think that's a big relief. That the TRAI paper was just vile. It just made absolutely no sense. In that sense, the DOT committee is far better. It's still not ideal, but it's better. I'm also very surprised and pleasantly surprised about the fact that there is that they've recommended no regulation for messaging services as well, which means that WhatsApp messages are still allowed. I just wish that we would allow technology to move forward, and for us to move, from regular phone calling to VoIP. We shouldn't be trying to restrict the march of technology. We don't know what is there ahead of us. But tomorrow, when, for example, virtual reality will come in, are we going to have restrictions on that as well? Are there going to be restrictions on video calling, while there are restrictions on regular on phone calling as well? We need to open up and reduce the restrictions, not increase them.
Sure. All right, completely out of time, Nikhil. Thanks so much for joining us live with that perspective, and Mr. Ramachandran as well. That's the big net neutrality debate.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.